This little pot of Lewisia I've been growing here very comfortably for a number of years. They're quite hardy, they can be left out all year round here in the UK, but what they don't like is wet, damp, cold roots over winter, so good drainage is absolutely key. And you can see we've got them growing here in a very gravelly and gravel top dressed compost in a container. Again, we've taken care to make sure that there's a good layer of gravel in the base of this, but just look at the thickness of the stem on this particular one here. That was the original one that we planted in this container. It's probably been in for around 10 years, still flowering beautifully, and they will repeat flower throughout the season. They'll usually have a big flush like this in May, and then after that flush is finished, if you take care of them and feed them with a proprietary, I use tomato feed on these, they'll come back and trickle feed throughout the summer months. So really good value, perennial to grow in a container pot grown Lewisias so much. We've been out looking around the garden centres for a couple of weeks now, and these are quite easy to find, but finding really well grown healthy looking plants can be a little trickier. Sometimes the offerings in supermarkets and the big end stores tend to not be looked after particularly well, but we found these at Edgefield, our local nursery, where Gary really knows his plants and takes care of them incredibly well. These three we found, they cost just over £3 a plant, which for a plant that size and with that much bud potential, and I think's a really good price and opportunity. We got three slightly different coloured ones. If you want to be purist, you could go all single colour. I particularly like the whites, they do stand out from a long distance, but we just couldn't resist this little striated pink, yellow and orange tipped large clustered flower there. Not as many flower stems coming up as on the white, but you know, that one just does a little stunner. And then this one again, different habit. Look how much more open that one is compared to the one in front, with quite a tightly packed cabbage-like floret of leaves. This one, slightly different strain, holds its flowers much higher up, but I think planted together, and this is the ideal sort of low terracotta bowl that we found ideal for these. Large hole in the base, and what I'm going to do is put a good crock or piece of old pot across there, and then about ½ an inch to an inch of coarse gravel, and I'm just going to use the pea gravel that we have everywhere in this garden before we start loading this up with compost. Well, there's my base layer to ensure that these roots don't sit in any damp. And again, in the compost that we're using, which is just garden compost, I'm putting a lot of, again, coarse grit into this to really make sure that I've got an open mixture that's not going to clog and form clumps, because this is quite a rich garden compost. You know, they do like to be fed, Lewisia, but they don't want to be sat in anything too cloggy or too much humus. There we go. Lovely job. Now when it comes to planting the Lewisia, you want to try and get them at a similar level to what they've been growing in the pot. And I want to be able to put a top dressing of gravel around the top here to stop water splashing onto the crowns. So I'm not overfilling the compost in this container. The first one's gone in there. It's going to be quite a tight fit, these, because they're big grown plants. I'm going to have to take most of this compost back out, I think, to get the second and third ones in. I'll just ease them around. These aren't completely filling the pot, so you can see they're only just starting to root out of where they've been potted on quite recently, and they're in quite a very freely drained but very dry, probably coir based compost this, which they'll do okay for a short period of time, but they really do need to get their roots down into something a little bit more substantial than that if we're going to keep these growing over winter. So we'll see how we get on planting the other two in here. Well, there we go, we've got all three in, and they're looking very full already in that pot, but they don't mind being crowded. Now Lewisia have these very sort of fleshy, almost cactus-like leaves, and if you get any damage on them while you're planting, don't be afraid to pull some of these off and just tidy them up a bit. What I'm now going to do is just put a top dressing all around these crowns, working them underneath the leaves, just again to stop any water splashing up, and it will just help retain some moisture in the compost as well. while these get established in, but it also keeps slugs and snails away from the crowns, which can be a bit of a problem. Again, with these fleshy leaves, they'll just be salad to snails and snugs. So there we go, I'm happy with that. Some of these composts were quite dry, so I'm going to give this pot a really good watering now, and then take it round and put it in position where we're going to have a second, hopefully beautiful pot of Lewisia to grow away for the next few years. And there we are, a lovely pot of 3 Lewisiae, which are flowering immediately and should give us a lovely display during the rest of May and for years to come. Thanks for watching.